Hey guys, thanks so much for checking out my show. I really appreciate it. Please click to subscribe. Also, if you would rather listen, I am now on Spotify, Apple, all those podcast platforms, so I have a link down in the description. In this episode, I'm going to talk about more allegations that continue to surface ever since the Kentucky Sheriff Stines, shot the Judge Kevin Mullins. This really opened up a can of worms about alleged corruption in the small town, allegations of corruption in a sex ring involving high-ranking officials. New in this episode, I have new information that law enforcement is starting to ask questions regarding some of the people that we have interviewed over the last couple of months. So I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'll also get to a new interview that I have with a woman from Letcher County with her own story to tell. In terms of what appears to be law enforcement asking questions, this stems from our interviews again that we've been doing, interviews with Taya Adams, a woman who says she had sex with Judge Kevin Mullins many times to get out of trouble. And also my interview with this woman who worked in the Letcher County Jail at one point, who said she saw things and heard stories about women being brought into the courthouse for sex parties, she said. So there is this federal lawsuit that is out there, and allegations that the sheriff was nervous about testifying and that his testimony could involve things he knew about the judge. And really this entire situation. And there are also allegations that he was threatened. Remember that body camera video that came out that clearly shows the sheriff paranoid after his arrest. He basically thought that someone was going to kill him and was acting really paranoid. And when he got to the jail, they acknowledged also that he was in some state of psychosis. I've got specific episodes on all of these elements. If you want to go back and watch them all, look in the description if you kind of want the backstory on everything that has happened here. So again, I'm going to get to the latest on what law enforcement may be doing in a bit, but first I want to get to my new interview with a woman named Jamie Rayburn. She, again, lived in Letcher County. She was in and out of jail along with many others in her family, and she talks about their history with the judge and also with the sheriff. How did you first meet the judge?
So my first encounter was when I was a juvenile, which it wasn't nothing out of the ordinary because I was put on like a juvenile probation and then I went to juvie. Um, so then later on in life, when I become of age, um, I was on drugs and stuff, and I ended up doing some time in jail. And in 2019, I went and decided to get clean and go through the ARC program. And he kind of personally reached out to me within those times, like helping me, tell me he was proud and stuff. But then an indication that kind of alarmed me to know that all the rumors I heard my whole life about him is he invited me to this seminar in March of 2021, a drug seminar while I was in rehab, basically to tell a little bit of like my story. And he was just trying to like, I guess, make me like a poster child. I don't know, but he was just trying to share my story and stuff. But he was just very weird during that. Like before, he was just very inappropriate, to me.
Like what
Um,
happened? Was he calling you?
he
Yeah.
he just told me like if I ever needed anything, just to come to his chambers. Like if I ever got in trouble, that I could come and talk to him. But like us women know what that means. You know what I'm saying? And he just made me feel very uncomfortable. He just looked at me like a dog. But most of my story is my mom too. That's why I was reaching out because my mom had a lot. She's no longer here anymore, but my mom had uh the sexual stuff with him and all that.
When you say she's not here, did she pass away or? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
actually, she done a lot of jail time. She was actually a drug addict, but she actually passed away. She didn't even get to come home. The Letcher County jail didn't take care of her at all while she was sick. Um,
She was
but
sent to the
like
jail.
the beginning of like her drug, like she used to go have sex with a judge to get out of trouble. I remember she got my dad in some very big trouble. She went and had sex with the judge. You know, when people are on drugs, they're so numb and, you know, people don't like going to jail and stuff. I mean, I'm sure it upset her you know, from all the drugs and all the abuse and trauma that my mom went through. Like, she was not in the right state of mind at all. Um, she was very traumatized from a lot of stuff that has been done to her. I do know that. My grandparents actually raised me, so like my mom was in and out of my life a lot too when I was younger.
How well known was it that, if you had sex with the judge, you could get out of things?
Very well known. Like every girl, like everybody knows that. Even with lawyers too. It's not just the judges. It's like a lot of people that's done this for years. Like it's been over decades that this stuff has really been going on. With my memo, yes, because like I know this sounds weird and stuff. I was needing to get an expungement, and my memo was really trying to put me up to go see Judge Mullins just to get me out of my expungement. But families know that stuff too. I don't know if all families do that with their kids, but I mean, like my memo was trying to get me just so I could, you know, have a better life and stuff. Like families are aware of this stuff now. I don't know if they've ever, you know, put them up to do stuff like that, but from my personal experience, like, yeah,
What would your mama say?
she'd just be like, "Oh, you just need to go see Kevin Mullins, and he'll fix it for you. You just need to go down there and see him and stuff." Like she knew why I didn't want to go, and she knew that I could go. You know, I really try to keep like I'm only 29. I've been in a lot. Like I've lived a hard life, and I really try to not do bad anymore. You know, so that's kind of why I never like after rehab and all that. Like that's why I never really went back because I don't really want to live like that no more, you know.
With the drugs, like so many people, it seems like in that area have had issues with drugs. Like, how do you describe it? Like, how do people get sucked in?
It's a very small area. There isn't nothing to do. You really have to have an education to even have any money there. You know, the coal mines used to be like a lot of income for people back in the day, but I think people get sucked into it because there's nothing to do. It's very small, and you know, generational curses. Families do it. You know, moms and dads there do drugs with their kids there. It's just it's crazy. So I just think that it's just a lot of nothing to do there. Families just not knowing any better to do. Just nothing to do there.
What do you mean by generational curses?
I just feel like, so I'm really big in my faith. I'm not going to say like I'm a Christian. I am a Christian, but I have a bigger relationship with God than whatever. So I just think that there's a lot of generational curses there. You know, a lot of my story, my mom and dad both done drugs with me. They weren't very they weren't very motherly or fatherly to me. So that's a lot of what happens back there. I just think that it just goes back, and I just think my generation is cursed a little bit. I know that sounds crazy, but that stuff is real.
So, people actually do drugs with their parents.
Yes.
You did that.
Yes.
I guess it's hard to know right from wrong then if you're doing it with your.
Yeah, like, well, I grew up seeing my mom and dad do it my whole life, so I was like, well, if my mom and dad is doing that, why, you know, it's okay for me to do it. My mama and papa did raise me right. Like, my mama and papa were very successful. They raised me with right morals, but it didn't fill the void of them being my mom and dad. So it made me very rebellious. And then I thought that, you know, I started doing drugs when I was 16. That's when my grandmother let me start kind of having a relationship with my mom because she knew that it was hard on me all these years without her. And like I just started doing drugs with her because I thought like, well, maybe she might love me now. I don't know. It's just weird.
What kind of drugs?
At first it started out like as drinking and weed and then pills like Xanaxes, pain pills. I got on Suboxone really bad. I did abuse that at first. And then by the time I was 18, meth started coming in the area. And that thank God I didn't get on no fentanyl or anything. I went to rehab before that stuff came there. But um, weed, it was alcohol, weed, pills, and then meth,
Did
and
you
then
ever
all of it together.
did you ever know the sheriff? Sheriff Stines?
Yes, Mickey.
Yeah.
Yes. He was actually the bailiff for like 20 years in Kevin's court. He was a very good man.
What did you think when you heard that he shot the judge?
I thought he was going losing his mind. I didn't know what was going on.
I'm joined now by Allison Weiner, the producer that I've been working with on this story in Kentucky, who's been back to Kentucky recently. First of all, Allison, I want to get your reaction to Jamie Rayburn. I just played the interview that I did with her. What I found to be, and I know you have some other new information that you're going to get to from people you've talked to, but I just wanted to quickly touch on, like when she talks about sort of this generational issue and doing drugs with her parents. Uh, it sounds to some outsiders, it sounds so crazy, but after you go there, you realize that this is actually like sort of normal in a weird way.
Well, we've heard about Appalachia and the various drugs, and I think what's interesting about Jamie's is she gives us kind of the panoply of how the drug of choice changed over the years, but it still had the same effect, and it's almost cultural at this point. And I'm not saying that everybody in all of Appalachia has, a drug problem, and everybody in this area of Whitesburg has a drug problem, but it certainly is pervasive. And the thing that strikes you when you're talking to, various people in town and in the surrounding areas is that a lot of them have been in jail. A lot of them have serious, serious substance abuse problems and continue throughout their life to have serious substance abuse problems that start at a very young age. So yeah, I think that it was interesting to hear her say it. I also heard it from other people that I've talked to, that their parents, they were there while their parents were doing drugs. And that's true of Taya's daughter, so Leah, who says the same stuff. And I had an interview with her just a few weeks ago, and she was also talking about the fact that she was around it as a child and ultimately succumbed to having somewhat of a drug problem. She seems to be a bit more successful in terms of staying sober, and I'm happy for her for that. But yeah, I think it seems to ruin generation after generation of women and of men in this particular area. So it's very sad, and I think it makes it very obvious why these women were chosen as victims. They have illness.
Yeah, right. And it's complicated. I mean, even for us covering it, you know, they're complicated people that have drug abuse histories and been in and out of prison, but also have an important story to tell, which gets me to the next thing. So you were back in Kentucky. What more have you learned? I mean, well, first of all, are the police, because we've reached out to the Attorney General's office, haven't gotten a response. Do we know if police are doing any investigating behind the scenes in terms of these allegations against the jail, against the judge?
Yes, we actually do have reports from some of the people or at least from one of the people that we've spoken to who we're keeping anonymous at this point, who was contacted by police to come in and speak with them about allegations that she's made about, not specifically, we don't know specifically, and I don't really want to get into the specifics. I mean, the few things that I do know, because I don't want to reveal who it is, but they have been contacted, and that meeting is supposed to take place in the near future at the police station. But of course, when this person was contacted, they thought this is probably going to be an arrest, or they're going to instant fear, because the experience that these women and many of the men have had with law enforcement is so negative that they're ultimately very suspicious, and with good reason in some cases.
But it still seems, at least there's some kind of progress, it seems, behind the scenes. Uh, Hopefully that, there are some law enforcement agencies that are going to be looking into this sort of bigger picture here.
Well, the people that we spoke to weren't particularly hopeful, but again, they're coming from a very bad perspective in their interactions with law enforcement, things that we've reported. So, but perhaps the police are willing to investigate what happened in Letcher County Jail, what happened to some of these ladies. Maybe there is a little bit of progress, so we're waiting to see. But I have to reserve judgment because we've seen the police do some bad things. And when I say that, I mean Ben Fields. There has been a conviction of somebody forcing these inmates to have sex in order to get them freedom or to get drug rehab or to pay for their home confinement, all of those things.
And Ben Fields, for people who have sort of lost track of everything, is a deputy or was a deputy in Letcher County who was convicted of forcing a woman to have sex while in custody. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, yes, that's correct. She wasn't able to pay for her ankle monitor. He said, don't worry about it. They flirted, and eventually she had to have sex with him to keep the deal going. And eventually she didn't want to do it anymore. There were issues with her boyfriend. There's several women who've accused Ben Fields, but he was the one that ultimately is the only person in this entire scheme of basically trafficking women from prison to use as sex objects or to have sex with. He's the only person who's had any kind of a conviction and served any time in jail, albeit, only, a few months under really good circumstances.
You spoke to the mother of the victim who in the Ben Fields case. Tell me a little bit about that and sort of what these families are up against when they try to speak out against things that have happened.
I think there's and I can't really speak specifically. I think when she's ready, she's going to talk about it. I have spoken to her, but she did say that there is a fear of repercussions for speaking out, that certain people, that they'll get arrested, that for driving a certain way, or just it's a very small community. And there's a lot of reaction to them speaking out, particularly on podcasts, and so she at this time declined to do a podcast interview, but is, considering it. But when she talked to me, there was just a lot of concern for safety, her safety of her daughter, just safety of everybody. There's just a lot of concern about repercussions or payback for talking. And that's something that I hear from a lot of people that don't want to be public in their commentary.
Are there any other women who have started to come forward?
Yes, I did speak to another woman, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about what she had to say. I don't, again, want to use her name because she wanted to remain anonymous out of fear of being arrested or just having, problems with local law enforcement or state law enforcement. This is a woman who did spend time in the Letcher County Jail, ultimately had problems with substance abuse. On our fourth offense, she told me, I knew I was in trouble. I really did. I was waiting in the jail, and she was brought up out of court, and she was brought up to the courtroom by Mickey Stines, and she was before Judge Mullins. And while she had known Mullins for most of her life, as I said, it's a very small community, and she said that she ended up being terribly frightened. She was told that she was looking at 5 to 10 years in jail. And so she said, I was scared. I didn't want to go back to jail. I couldn't tell nobody this. And I was scared to go back to jail. And she said other women had much worse charges and they'd gone home. So I know how they went home, and I went home that day.
Essentially saying that she had sex with the judge?
Oral sex.
Oral sex. Okay.
Yeah, oral sex with the judge. I'm not giving all of the details because that would identify her, because as I said, it's a small place. But you've been there with me. We have talked to these women and they're very frightened. And what she was saying to me really resonated, because she said the reason she doesn't want anyone to know is she's so ashamed. And she never told her family about it. She didn't want them to know that she'd done something so disgusting so that she didn't have to go to jail for 5 to 10 years. And she was frightened. She knew the judge. He said, come and see me in my chambers many times. She had other arrests before she got to the 4th time, but the 4th time he wanted payback. He wanted her. She had to give him oral sex or she was going to jail. And it's horrible. It's a horrible, another woman coming forward, telling both of us their story. And their story was about Judge Mullins. And we've heard about other people, but right now, the number of people that have talked about Judge Mullins using his courtroom basically as a brothel, the numbers are beginning to add up. And some of the women are getting very scared because they see other people being stopped or arrested, or they fear they're being arrested. Even when the one person that we were just speaking about was asked to come in and speak to the police, she fears being arrested or being intimidated or being threatened when she gets in with the police to keep her mouth shut.
Do you think any of this will play into Sheriff Stines' trial? Is more about this going to come out? Is this going to become part of the trial, do you think?
I think so, because it's interesting. A lot of these victims, a victim, I should say at this point, who said they were forced to have sex with Sheriff Stein, that he was a part of this, sex trafficking ring. Instead, they have said, of course, he knew about it. He had to have known about it. But he never forced the ladies or had the ladies come up or had sex with them. So I think they're going to come forward and talk about what the atmosphere was. And we know that, and we've reported that the sheriff has mental issues, that he became very distressed when he was going to be deposed in a lawsuit that was delving into this sex trafficking ring. And so, yes, I do think it's going to be a part of it. Don't you?
I do. Yeah. I guess it would tie into maybe his defense of why he became so emotionally disturbed. Like maybe that was the reason.
Well, a lot of these ladies are saying specifically that he knew about it, and right before this lawsuit was blowing up and he had to go take the fall, he's the only person named in that lawsuit, in the federal lawsuit about the sex trafficking, and claims that, all the things that we've been talking about, that he had to know, but they were putting pressure on him not to expose them. That is going to be part of the defense. That is what we were hearing from, different sources close to the defense for Sheriff Stines, former Sheriff Stines. So, yeah, I think what we're going to see is, yes, he knew about it maybe, but he was pressured to keep that little society and all those men that were in power, keep quiet about them, so that when this goes, when this lawsuit gets settled, they'll help him out in the end. Maybe, I don't know what they said, but they also, he claims, threatened his family. And we saw parts of that in the video afterwards, that he, and there's also evidence that he was psychotic, that he was paranoid. That's what we're going to see from the defense. But I think these ladies are going to play a part in saying that he wasn't involved in this, but he did know who was involved in it. I guess that's the easiest and most straightforward way to explain it.
What did you make of the sheriff's daughter, going on TikTok? You saw those videos?
Yeah.
Basically saying this is real life and this is my family. And, it was just kind of sad, I think, to see. You realize how this is impacting people on all sides.
Well, there was a lot of wrong reporting at the beginning, and it's not something we were part of, that claimed that the sheriff's daughter was part of this ring and having an affair with Judge Mullins. None of it was true.
Right.
And she wasn't involved in any way, shape, or form, but she has been the subject of speculation. She's been the subject of rumors. She's a kid. And I think it probably just had gotten to her that it continues, despite it now being announced and that we saw in the grand jury testimony, that even the state's witness said she had nothing to do with it, that they investigated every which way to Sunday, and they found no evidence that she was involved with Judge Mullins in any way, shape, or form. So I felt really sorry for her, because once these things get out there in the wrong way, or wrong information gets disseminated by people that are kind of careless, people pay the price, and she's a kid that's paying the price. Her dad's in prison for murdering the Judge Mullins, and her family's destroyed at this point. I mean, it's not her fault. So you have to feel some empathy for that young woman.
What do you say to people, and you and I have discussed this a lot, people who are like, why should we believe these women? Look at their criminal histories. They've been in and out of jail. They've done drugs their whole life. They have shady pasts. Why should we believe them? Why should we be listening to them?
I think those are fair commentary. I think when people are saying that, it's fair of them to say that. I think what we are finding is we individually interview these women who claim to be victims of Judge Mullins, victims of Ben Fields, victims of other members of the community who we haven't named as of yet, but there are allegedly other members that were involved in this. And we begin to see a pattern. The stories are very similar, that these women were used. They had a choice to jail and serve ridiculously long sentences, or provide sex for these men. So what I say is they're flawed. Sometimes they're unreliable. Sometimes they still have substance abuse problems. But from everything we've seen, and I know you share my thoughts on this from covering crime and different stories, is that predators pick out their victims very carefully. And they pick people that can't fight back, that people won't believe. I mean, they are careful about it, and they have a sense of who would be the best victims. And frankly, if you made up a list of traits of a victim, these women would be at the top of the list. As you said, unreliable, been in and out of jail, did the offenses that they're accused of sometimes not, but certainly some of them. However, we have to look for patterns in the stories. You actually pointed out something to me that I thought was really interesting, is that when we're interviewing someone and they don't say everything happened to them, and they don't try to follow a specific narrative where where we ask, did this happen, did that happen? They're just yes. When somebody says, no, that didn't happen, that helps us in our investigation to understand that they're being specific about how they were allegedly abused. I mean, it helps you kind of separate out. When you're interviewing somebody and they just say, they just think they're saying what you want them to say,
Yeah.
You understand that that's a problem.
Yeah, almost like if you're leading someone along and they'll just go wherever you're leading them, that's sometimes a bad sign. Whereas some of these women who we've interviewed will say, no, well, that part didn't happen to me. Or no, that's not exactly, you know what I mean? They're not just following our lead necessarily, which like you said, I think to me shows truthfulness.